Yeah, what's up to those of you at mochurch.tv? Welcome. What's up to my dog pound in person? What's up? Yeah. All right, so turn to Isaiah 43. You can go to the free Bible app, or you can open a hard copy Bible. So we've been hearing this concept a lot for the last few months, and that's the concept of the new normal. Like all the time, the new normal is. And for us, of course, that means wearing masks and social distancing and Zoom meetings, and unfortunately, unemployment and cabin fever and empty ballparks and elbow bumps. No one did elbow bumps before quarantine. You know, it's like a new normal thing, people doing elbow bumps. And most of us have been, during the quarantine, told a new reality that's been hard to feel. It's been in our psyches, and that is, for many of us during quarantine, you found out you were non-essential. That hurts. It's like, okay, some of you are essential, but a whole bunch of you are non-essential, so just stay home, we'll take care of things. That hurts. That resounds for a while, doesn't it? Like, I'm not essential? I thought I was important to society. No, you contribute nothing important. So we've been dealing with that. That's been a new normal of like recovering from that, seeing therapists about that kind of stuff. But some things about the new normal I think have been good. One thing I hope sticks in the new normal that's been part of quarantine and that I hope it lasts in the future is birthday parades. Haven't those been awesome? Like little kids coming out in their front yard with their family and being honored by friends driving by with decorated vehicles, honking horns and throwing gifts out the door and all that kind of stuff. I think cheering for our healthcare workers like they're American heroes now, and they're being honored like the way that we used to honor military. Now it's like healthcare workers too, like, yeah, go healthcare workers, which I love. I hope that sticks. And for a lot of Christians, what I hope sticks into the future has been a part of the new normal, has just been realizing that even a pandemic can't stop Jesus' church. Like, I love that. Like, even older congregations that have dwindled and been small, during quarantine, people went into virtual church and people couldn't show up. And so even older congregations were like, oh, I'm going to set up this Facebook Live thing. And they'd put it on the preacher and they'd go off. And people would be at home. Edith and Emma and Hank would be watching online. And suddenly everybody was like, hey, I didn't want to do virtual church before that, like watching on video. And now it's like, hey, we're okay with that because we got to worship. Even a pandemic couldn't stop Jesus' church. Now, I know there's a lot of people, though, who are kind of at the place of saying, I can't wait till we get back to the old normal. Okay, I can't wait till we get back to the old normal. And I admit, I'm grieving some of the loss of the old normal in some ways. Like, I want my kids to go back to school in person, at least some, but they don't get to. The first quarter, they're all virtual. I'm like, oh, man, so tough to sit in front of a screen all the school day. That is so difficult. You know, I want to have in-person staff meetings with my staff, even if it's just monthly, you know, just the Zoom stuff, you know, for a lot of people, it's getting old. And I wanted last weekend to hug the widow at the funeral that I went to, but I didn't want to put her in danger, but she was grieving, and I felt so brokenhearted for her, but it just didn't feel appropriate to be able to hug her in that moment. That made me miss the old normal. Like, man, I'm past this. I want to get back to hugging people that I love, giving fist bumps to people and all that. Well, leadership guru and follower of Jesus, John Maxwell, he's written approximately 82,000 books. He said this at one point: change is inevitable, growth is optional. Okay, so no matter what you might think about change, no matter what I might think about change, it's inevitable. Things are going to constantly change in ways that I'm not always comfortable with, in ways that I don't necessarily love, but growing in the midst of that change, figuring out how to adapt, all that's optional. Like, you could be the exact same stuck person at the end of change occurring if you don't choose to say, how am I going to grow through this? You know, an example of that is last week, no one said, hey, I'm going to slide over to Circuit City and grab some headphones, right? And then I'm going to go over to Blockbuster and I'm going to rent a movie. Then I'm going to go over to Toys R Us to pick up a toy for my son for his birthday, maybe grab a new book at Borders. And then maybe out in front of Borders, I'm going to take a selfie with my Kodak camera. No one said that last week. None of those things. No one said any of that because those are companies whose products were still relevant, but they didn't adapt and change. Or they didn't realize what their true product should have been, maybe a little broader than what they were focusing on. And they didn't adapt and change or grow the way they needed to. So how they delivered their product or what they saw their product as, it became irrelevant. And eventually they disappeared. And so no one went to grab a ream of paper at Staples last week because they didn't change, adapt, and keep up. I actually recently heard a Christian leader talking about a piece of wisdom that his mentor gave to him. And I thought it was so powerful. He said, I have a mentor that taught me never waste a crisis. I don't want to go through any more crises personally. I'm good with that. I'd be good if God was like, you know what? No more for you. You guys have been through enough, right? But the truth is, crises occur. Never waste a crisis. Always take the opportunity to say, man, what am I supposed to learn in the midst of this season of a crisis? No one wants them, but they are inevitable. I actually just learned about a week and a half ago that actor Stephen Baldwin, who became popular through that movie Born on the 4th of July. Later he was in The Usual Suspects. Who is Kaiser Sose? That movie. And he's also brother to Alec Baldwin, the most famous of the Baldwin brothers, who was on 30 Rock. Well, they grew up in a Roman Catholic family, but as they entered into Hollywood, they all pretty much abandoned the Roman Catholic faith. But do you know what Stephen Baldwin credits for his catalyst to coming back to following Jesus and the faith of Christianity? The 9/11 terrorist attacks. He says, that's the thing that drew me back to Jesus. And now he travels around the country talking about his faith. Here's the deal, guys. Never waste a crisis. Always be able to say, man, I would never want this to happen, but this is our broken, fallen world and the racial crap that's going on and the pandemic and the sicknesses and all these things, and step back and say, God, what am I supposed to learn through this? Like, it's awful, and I know it's not your will that people are hurting each other based on race, and there's systemic racial injustice, and there's pandemic and death and sickness. I know that this was not your plan for the world, but what am I supposed to learn from this crisis? Never waste a crisis. Always look at that and see what God wants to teach you. Because if your response to a crisis is to run or avoid or just try and survive or simply weather the storm or isolate yourself until the crisis is over, then you've wasted a crisis. And you come out of that the same person, maybe the same stuck person that you were before the crisis. So we have to continually look at our current situation. Look at the change going on. Look at the crisis. Seek God's wisdom and direction. What do you want us to learn from this, God? What are you trying to teach me? And adapt and grow. So turn to Isaiah 43. Throughout the history of God's interaction with mankind and throughout the scriptures even, God has often gotten to seasons where he has revealed to people sometimes things like this. In Isaiah 43, he says this. God says, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. He goes on and says, now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? The new thing that I'm doing, I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland. I'm doing a new thing. Are you missing it? Do you not perceive what I'm doing? And different seasons, that was God specifically introducing a new thing he was doing then for his people. But you see also throughout Scripture, many, many times in Isaiah and in the Psalms, you'll see someone write this phrase, sing to the Lord a new song. That's not just in Scripture once. It's many times in Scripture. Someone writes in their prayer journal, or a prophet writes as word from the Lord, sing to the Lord a new song. And what God is saying is, hey, keep celebrating some of those old school things. Keep celebrating some of those classics from the past, like the fact that I delivered you from slavery from Egypt. Celebrate that. But I'm doing a new thing right now. And based on this new way that I'm blessing you or stepping in to help you, I want you to sing a new song based on this new thing that I'm doing, a new event. So don't miss this opportunity to sing the old songs, but sing new songs about the new era, the new normal, and the way that I've delivered you now. Jesus came along as God in the flesh in the first century. And in Luke 5, Jesus said this, No one pours new wine into old wineskins. The new wine would burst the old skins. No, new wine must be poured into new wineskins. There has to be an adaptation, a change from the way you used to do things to adapt to the new normal. Now, there, we're talking about God doing a new thing through Jesus, the birth of Jesus, coming into the world, ministry, miracles, death through the cross, and resurrection. And here's the problem that happened in the first century. This group of religious people called the Pharisees, like a denomination of the Jewish faith, they didn't perceive what God was doing. They looked at God in the flesh right in the eye and didn't recognize him, so they fought to keep the status quo while God was showing up in the flesh saying, I'm doing a new thing. And they resisted and they fought for the status quo while God was calling them in a new direction. And they didn't realize that the new thing was far better than the old thing. I mean, the new thing was grace received by faith in Christ. That's how you're saved. Like, hey, we're moving on from the Old Testament, the Old Covenant, like the 10 Commandments being the stuff that your life is built around. No, now it's grace received by faith in Jesus. So God, through Jesus, was moving from Old Covenant, or agreement between God and man, to New Covenant, Old Testament to New Testament. God's like, I'm doing a new thing. Jesus is standing right in front of you, but you're fighting for the status quo and you're missing it. They weren't willing to adapt, to let go of the old normal, to embrace the new normal, and follow God into a new thing that he was doing. So, this morning is largely about rolling out the new thing that God is up to at Momentum. That Momentum moves people forward to love God, love people, and make disciples, spiritual apprentices of Jesus, who make disciples themselves. And so, through all the change and the crises and all the stuff going on, our elders, our leadership team at Momentum for months now have been like, man, God, what do you want us to learn? Like, what are you revealing to us? What do you want our next steps to be? How do we adapt? How do we change and make sure that we understand, like, our message is always going to be the same. Jesus Christ is the same today, yesterday, forever. But our method is going to change. It's going to have to, or we're still going to be doing Sunday school and bus ministry and knocking door to door. You know, methods have to change while the message stays the same. And one of the things that happened is, as the elders have prayed about what our next steps are, one of the things that we've bottom lined is that a strong sense that God is calling Momentum into an indefinite season of being one physical campus and one online campus, which is mochurch.tv. And saying, man, this is like clearly where God is leading us right now, is that we have one physical campus here in Macedonia and one online campus, which is mochurch.tv. Now, why? Well, the why comes down to, first and foremost, it came from just praying and fasting. You know, for weeks of seeking direction from God, like, God, what's our next step? Where do we lead from here as pandemic and staff changes and all that went on? But also, it was a choice to be proactive as opposed to reactive. Okay, so our Garfield Heights campus, and we also had a Twinsburg, Macedonia campus, two-campus church and online also. We met as Garfield Heights campus in Maple Leaf School and Garfield Heights City Schools. Well, we don't have that option anymore. Like, they won't let us in. Understandably so, they have to protect their students, their teachers, their administration, you know, all that stuff. And so it's not an option for us to be in Maple Leaf School, understandably so. So we're out indefinitely. I was predicting at the beginning, like, man, I bet we won't be able to be back in till at least 2021 at some point. In fact, recently, they didn't know about our decision to go back to one physical location right now. And recently, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks ago, they contacted Courtney Kaiser, admin assistant at Momentum, and said, hey, you need to get the rest of your stuff out. And we were like, oh, man. So we got stuff mounted on the ceilings, like lights and all that stuff. And they were like, you need to get the rest of your stuff out. And we were like, oh, crud, like, it's no time soon that we will be allowed back in Maple Leaf School. And so, luckily, we're proactive on this, saying, okay, it seems like God is leading us and saying to us, this is our next step, and we want to be proactive rather than reactive. Now, for many of you, you're looking at me right now going, duh, this is a no-brainer. Like there's some of you who are going to be like, yeah, like we've fully been anticipating that this would be the next step, is saying, okay, one physical campus and an online campus. Because one, we've had a growing list of missed opportunities at Garfield Heights campus based on a lack of facilities. I mean, the list has continued to grow for the last couple of years, and for 2 years, we were searching for permanent facilities, and nothing that was good that's just covered with mold, or nothing that was affordable for us was popping up in the radius that we were looking at. And so we've just been missing opportunities like crazy, but all the while praying for a building for the Garfield Heights campus. And in such a strange way, honestly, I feel like this is the way God has answered our prayer. Like, man, I didn't see it coming this way. This was not on my mind at all. But here's our answer to prayer. God's like, hey, dummy, there is a building for the Garfield Heights campus, And so the elders perceived that together, and we were like, man, I believe that this is the door God is opening for us, and that is one physical campus and one online campus. Another no-brainer part of this is, here's the math. We got one preacher. We got one building, okay? It kind of makes sense. We have one physical location, which again, COVID kind of pushed us to before we had staffing changes. And so, bottom line is this. If you live a good distance from the building, but you are local, I kind of want to give you 3 options of how to creatively start thinking about this so that you can still be a part of Momentum, because that is what I would desperately love to happen, is for you to still be a part of Momentum. And so whether you're people from the Garfield Heights campus, whether you're West Siders, maybe during this virtual season of the pandemic, you started tuning in from somewhere opposite of this building from Garfield Heights, like toward Ravenna or something, and you're like, man, I live a good distance from the building, and I started watching online during the pandemic. Here are 3 options for now or after coronavirus, whatever you think is best. The first is, I would love for you to make the weekly drive to join us in person physically to worship with us and just say, hey, I do live a little bit further now that this one physical campus thing has happened, but I'm going to make the drive and I'm going to join you. If you lived out in the country, if you ever have, the truth is, if you ask somebody, hey, where do you go to church? A lot of times the answer is, oh, it's about 45 minutes down that road. Go down about that. You go about 30 minutes, 35 minutes. You turn left at the Jones's barn. It's 45-minute drive to church every week, which is mind-blowing to urban and suburban people, right? But the truth is, it's a matter of perspective. And sometimes people in the country or people in urban and suburban areas have moved further from their church and still said, that's my church family. I'm going to drive a little bit further to be a part of my spiritual family. For me, it's about a 23-minute drive from where I live in Garfield Heights. May Saliba and her brother Matt, they live in North Olmsted. And the funny thing is, they haven't been a part of the Garfield Heights campus. They've been a part of this campus. And they've been a part of this campus for 2.5 years, driving 40 minutes every Sunday to come worship or to serve. And so I would love for everyone from the Garfield Heights campus to come worship with us in person and make the drive, especially if you have little kids and students. When Mo Kids is back cranking, I think that they're going to be like, oh yeah, it'll be great to have Mo Kids back. But if you live on the west side or Garfield Heights area or whatever, I would urge you, just pre-register for a service and make the drive a couple Sundays to get used to it and be like, oh, man, that's not as bad as I thought it would be. It's actually a pretty quiet, peaceful drive. And I've enjoyed listening to podcasts on the way here, or sipping on coffee to make sure I'm awake by the time we get here at 7 a.m. and all that stuff. But if you live in Garfield Heights area or whatever, part of the Garfield Heights campus originally, maybe you're a student and you don't have a ride, man, reach out to us and let us know. We would love to hook you up, if we can, with a non-creepy person to give you a ride, okay? They're few and far between at Momentum, all right? But, all these masked individuals and these bandits nowadays, but we would love to help you out with that. Second option is this. Think of your home as a house church through mochurch.tv, okay? This is what's been happening since the first century. Church buildings didn't come along for over 300 years, and it still has happened globally before the pandemic in many, many places. So you get to say, I'd like to invite people to my house, and I get to choose how many, and this is going to be a house church, and we're going to worship together. If you're a single person, I'm going to worship here, and I'm going to choose how many people I want to invite, and say, I'm going to make this a house church, and we're going to worship together through mochurch.tv. you get to be the senior minister of your own house church. Good luck with all that, okay? So that's what gets to happen. And then maybe that's the deal. Maybe you're a single person and you got a friend who you've been inviting to church, but they live further from Macedonia than you do. And you can say, man, why don't you come worship with me at my house, and we can do this virtually together, and any questions you got or anything like that, you can ask me along the way. Or maybe you're really close with one other family, and they have kids the same age as yours, and you're like, man, I think I want to invite that one family to hang out, and we'll do house church together. We'll worship together every Sunday. Or maybe your coworkers that you're really close to are reluctant to show up at a church building. You know, they constantly say those axioms like, oh, I'll get struck dead if I go into a church building. So maybe their first step is like, well, you could do house church. Like, come to my house and we'll worship together, because they would approach your house or apartment. Maybe they've been there many times already. Or maybe you've got a whole clan of extended family and you attend regularly or semi-regularly together, and just say, hey, we're gonna bring stuff in crock pots, we're gonna potluck it, we're gonna worship together, take communion together, we're gonna have a potluck dinner together, and then we're gonna turn on the Browns game. And say that's gonna be the house church mentality that we'll have, and we'll do that together. And let us know if you want to do that, because we'd love to provide you with the portable communion or paperback Bibles that you need. We can resource you as a house church. Then the third option, which is related to the second, is come join us in person once a month for Show Up Sunday. Just to say, okay, maybe the first Sunday of the month, which is what we're leaning toward, we'll just have a mini Easter every month. We'll get a couple of extra parking attendants to make sure people flow in and out of here, right, and have places to park and all that. And we'll all show up like a mini Mo Group convention once a month, and we'll worship together in person. We'll get to see each other, and most of us will get to worship together. And we'll just say this: God is doing a new thing among us. We'll be like, this doesn't look the exact same as the old normal, but it's the new normal, and some of it is good. Some of it's very different, and some of it is very, very good. And we'll get the whole spiritual family, or as many that can make it, together for celebration and for communion. And so the idea of what the elders feel like God is calling us forward to do is to say, let's come back together to build a strong base, and then we will build from there to continue to move forward. And so staffing-wise, instead of trying to find another guy that is like a lot of overlapping skills with myself, our quest has been to say, okay, let's go through a process to hire a full-time associate minister who instead kind of complements my strengths and weaknesses. Someone who's more different than me, actually, to say, man, the things that I don't have time to do or that aren't the center sweet spots of my giftedness, processes and systems, building teams, whatever it is, the things that I don't have time to do or that aren't my sweet spot, let's hire an associate full-time minister that can complement my strengths and weaknesses, and we'll work together, almost like, I hesitate to use the term, like a running mate, to say, okay, the two of us together will form a full-time staff base with two full-time staff members and kind of build from there. And so, man, this is really kind of a unification move that also is going to really strengthen a lot of the teams that we already have. I mean, we've had some great teams at both campuses, and now we'll have a chance to, and some of you have even seen some of it because of COVID, come back together and have a strong worship team, stronger. Like, there's been times with both of our worship teams where we've been like, we got one drummer, and that's it. I hope that drummer doesn't go down, And so that's been that way with different instrumentalists or vocalists. So now, to strengthen our worship team or our event planning team or our Mo Kids team when the time comes to have Mo Kids again, or even our staff team. And for those of you who have been a part of the Garfield Heights campus, this means no more setup and tear down. I can feel the excitement across the land. It's like no more setup and tear down, which I have been doing, frankly, since 1993. Okay? Seriously. Okay? I've been doing it since 1993, yet somehow I'm still 27 years old. Okay? So I've been doing that since 1993, but I'm also excited about that. But here's the truth for Garfield Heights campus people, artists formerly known as Garfield Heights campus people. The truth is now that means Garfield Heights campus people will need to pitch in and help with building maintenance team and the cleaning team, which is like the housekeeping, around here, and the grounds team, which is like mowing and landscaping. One stellar example of that has been Kiana Jones. She was originally a part of the Garfield Heights campus, would help part of the setup team on Friday afternoon to get services set up that were portable there in Maple Leaf School. Now, since we've reopened the building, she's leading our cleaning team at the building, making sure that everything's clean between services and in the bathrooms and all this stuff. She is absolutely killing it right now. So thank you, Kiana Jones. Absolutely killing it. And last week when the services were done, I went downstairs to use the little boys' room because I think maybe Kiana was cleaning the men's room or something like that. I went downstairs to use the bathroom, and I went down there, and I saw two guys fixing two doors downstairs. And I think this is really cool. This is Michael DeLelio, originally part of the Twinsburg, Macedonia campus. Rob Clausen, originally part of the Garfield Heights campus, who are working together to fix two of the doors that needed to be fixed on the building. And I was like, man, this is the new normal. Like, this is such a beautiful picture of the unity and the teamwork, and not like, hey, who's this freak from Twinsburg, Macedonia? Who's this idiot from the Garfield Heights campus? I don't know that. They were working together and fixing these, doors together, and I was like, dudes, I got to snap a quick photo of you guys because this is awesome. I'm about to roll something out next week that I need this picture for. That's unity. God is doing a new thing. And we're coming back to this base of strength, but I want to be clear, one thing we will not lose is that our number one core value is multiplication, is to say we are always looking for ways that God is calling us to multiply. And I really think that there are going to be so many more options and creative options once COVID is over that weren't there beforehand because of virtual church, and unfortunately, sadly, because church buildings are now even more available around every major city in, maybe the world, and all that stuff. And so there will be more, but we have no idea where that next campus would be if God calls us to multiply in that kind of way. But Momentum will continue to move people forward to love God, love people, and make disciples who multiply and make disciples. That's what we're all about. And honestly, I've had some time to mourn this, so I get it that some of you need to begin the grieving process of the old normal. I get that. That's totally healthy. But for me, I've kind of been there and done that already. I've kind of known what was coming and like, okay, here we are, and it's official. So I frankly am stoked out of my mind about it, like Miles Finch and Elf. I'm stoked out of my mind about these ideas right here. Okay, I'm pumped about that. Thanks for getting that reference. I'm so pumped about this because I am thankful to see people that before COVID, I only got to see every other week at either campus. Every other week, preaching every other week back and forth. And I'd do it again if I had to, but I'm pumped that I get to see you every week now for the people that show up in person. And I'm excited to worship alongside of a bunch of people that left the original campus and came to be the launch team for this campus when it launched in 2014, that frankly, it was only because of faith in God that I could say goodbye to them and have them leave our team, because I was like, man, God, this is for your kingdom, but I'm going to miss so many of these people and getting to worship alongside of them every week, and now I get to worship with them again, and I'm stoked about that. And for some of you who are a little bit worried about that, like, man, what will this look like? Like, I don't know what some of those people are like at the other campus. Well, the truth is, for those of you showing up in person, it's already been that way, right? For those of you in the chat rooms together, it's already been that way. COVID has kind of helped us kind of go through this transition in many ways, but also you've had glimpses of this if you've been a part of our Momentum community meetings. And you've been a part of this if you've been a part of our women's retreats annually, or our men's camping outings, or our student ministry, which comes together, every so often to have events. And so I just want to say, Twinsburg, Macedonia campus, you are inheriting some incredible people. And Garfield Heights campus, you are inheriting some incredible people. And now I think it's really fun because now with us together as one physical campus and one online campus, that means everyone gets to hear my friend Jamie Berna cackling in the front row when I make a okay joke. My little pretty. She laughs, and everybody's going to get to hear it now if you're in that service or online. Everyone is going to get to be challenged by the bold faith of Justin Hengel, who's out there right now taking temperatures. everyone is going to get to be around him and be like, man, that guy inspires me to want to talk about my faith in Jesus. Everyone's going to be blessed by the artistic stage design skills of Mary Beth Richmond or the painting skills of Rihanna Montero. Now everyone gets to be at the same campus as the power couple, Andrew and Ashley Bachna. Now everyone will get to enjoy the high energy of the Spanish commentator, the Cleveland Browns, who comes here, Octavio Sequeira. That dude, sometimes I need a nap after hanging out with him. He's so high energy, okay? But man, we're all going to get to, in fact, the combined sweetness of Leah Peterson from Twinsburg, Macedonia campus and Crystal Speth from the Garfield Heights campus coming together in the same campus. This campus is going to explode and rain Skittles. It's going to be crazy, and I'm going to love this part of the new normal. Like, I am absolutely stoked about it. But I do want to say this, because some of you are beginning the grieving process. If you have been a part of the Garfield Heights campus and you live further away than you did from Maple Leaf School, which isn't always the case. Some of our West Siders, for instance, same distance here as it was there. But I do want to ask you, how are you doing? Please let me know how you're doing. Email me, contact me, let me know how you're doing. Man, I hope you are still going to choose out of those three options and be a part of the Momentum family, because you are loved and you are valuable and you are a great part of Momentum. And if you were part of the Twinsburg, Macedonia campus, man, I know some of you may be disillusioned, maybe even still, from the loss of your campus minister on staff and that kind of stuff. Man, I totally get that. That is normal to grieve that. Some of you maybe have already grieved that. Some of you are like, oh man, it's official. That idiot Dan is going to be our leader now. I get it, okay? But I just want you to know, I want to hear from you. And man, you are a valuable part of Momentum. You are loved at Momentum, and I can't wait for us to be one unified team. And so I have been intentional about the language I've been using, and that is saying that we're going to be one physical campus and one online campus, which is mochurch.tv, a digital campus and the chat room and all that. And that's because there's just so much opportunity through mochurch.tv, especially now in COVID and post-COVID. Man, it's going to be incredible the amount of opportunity we have through mochurch.tv. And so more and more, we've just been looking at that as like an online campus. It's already been on the Connect card. What's your primary campus? And some click, man, my primary campus has been, it's been mochurch.tv. For instance, we have a lady named Sandy Stadler who might be in the chat room right now as Grammy 10 because she has a whole bunch of grandchildren. And she attends, worships, gives, participates in communion with us virtually through mochurch.tv. Greater Cleveland is her home, and she's back here about 3 weekends a month, or she's back here about 1 weekend a month. But the rest of the month, she lives in College Park, Maryland, and worships from there, and is within like a year or two of retiring back to Northeast Ohio, where God intended everyone to be, okay? And she worships with us at mochurch.tv, and I just want to say, man, welcome to the family, Sandy. That's so cool. And that is going to probably become more and more of the new normal for some people that live really far away from Macedonia, Ohio. For instance, the Munsons. The Munsons were a part of our original launch team, 2005 when we started Mo Groups, 2006 when we launched in Cinemark Valley View. Since COVID hit, they've been attending, worshiping, giving generously, and participating in communion with us virtually at home. And that's really cool because they live in Gainesville, Virginia now. They felt called by God back to Virginia. They still owned a house there. And they were like, man, we love Momentum, but I think we're supposed to go back to Virginia. And we don't fully know why. And they've been back for years now, but it's really cool because through mochurch.tv, our online campus, they worship with us every week now. And so it's like, man, welcome back to Momentum. Munson family. That's super cool too. Awesome people. But Momentum moves people forward to love God, love people, make disciples who make disciples. And man, I am frankly going to love the new normal for whatever season God has this being our one physical campus. Now, when pandemic hit, one other thing I want to roll out. When the pandemic hit, we had some dilemmas, and especially with staffing, because we came to all virtual church at one location, really just online. And we had staffing for 2 locations. We had 2 Mo Kids leaders. We had 2 worship leaders. We had 2 admin assistants. And we were like, like, what are we going to do about this? And we didn't want to lay anyone off. And honestly, thankfully, because of your generosity, we didn't have to. And that was incredible because these are real people, real single people, and real people with kids or families. And we didn't have to lay anybody off during that time, even though we didn't have Mo Kids meeting, for instance. Like, we didn't have to lay people off, and we were like, oh, we're so thankful for that. Both my admins, for instance, Courtney Kaiser, Rachel Gregory, they made themselves invaluable during the quarantine. I could not have made it out of the virtual alone season without them because they were total rock stars, and they killed it. But they helped me make it through all the changes and the crises, and I couldn't have done it without them. Well, also, one thing we've known at Momentum is that our student ministry has needed some attention. We had 2 locations, and we had interns, that would come as a student for a year, and often, as anticipated, would leave after a year, and they would go take a student ministry somewhere else. And sometimes we had volunteers step up and be point people and just kill it in a lot of situations like that. And so back in June, the clouds begin to part for some of the staffing dilemma of like, man, we have 2 of several things here. And then back in June, the clouds begin to break for one of those dilemmas when Lauren Love came to me and said, man, Dan, I got to be honest with you. I feel the strong calling to student ministry. She said, man, it had such a huge impact in my life when I was in high school. I was part of an incredible student ministry. And honestly, my training outside of the church is working with kids that are in student ministry age, middle school and high school. And she's like, man, and being a middle school teacher, I was constantly reminded of the need that this is such a pivotal time for spiritual growth and investment. And she was like, man, I really feel called to and I'm passionate about student ministry. And I just kind of want to put that in the lap of you and the elders. And so bottom line, that's how she feels called to serve God and families at Momentum. And on the flip side of that, Nicole Gates, who was our Mo Kids director at the Garfield Heights campus, her training actually is with kids who are Mo Kids aged. And she has worked as a partner alongside of Lauren together, they were counterparts, to form the Mo Kids ministry that we've had here at Twinsburg, Macedonia. And of course, Lauren has contributed stuff that we gleaned from in Garfield Heights. And so we have these 2 awesome, capable leaders. So the elders came together and were like, man, this really seems like what God is leading to also. And the door is open that for the first time, we're going to have someone on staff as our student ministry director. So Lauren Love is now going to be moving from part-time Mo Kids director to part-time student ministry director, which I am so thrilled about and so pumped that that is happening. And so pumped that that's happening. And then Nicole is going to be our point person for our one physical campus as Mo Kids director for all the Mo Kids at the unified physical location. And I say, praise God that you are doing a new thing. This will give such consistency. Man, I trust both of those leaders so much. And Lauren Love kind of taking over and leading those awesome ministry volunteers we already have with the students, the adult volunteers. Man, I would trust Lauren Love to lead anything. Okay, she is a stone cold assassin, all right? And so I am pumped to have her taking that over. And I'm just pumped. This has been a huge need at Momentum, and now we'll have one student ministry with one point person and a bunch of great student ministry volunteers that we already have. In fact, I love that this idea didn't even come from me. That helped me feel more like, God, this is something that you're doing, and it's a new thing. Like, I didn't even see this coming when Lauren came to me with this. And then when I announced it at our Zoom staff meeting on Monday, everyone froze while I was making the announcement. You know how Zoom works? Like, everybody's got an awkward look in some direction. Someone's like, mid-sip of coffee. Everyone froze visually except for one person, and that was admin assistant Courtney Kaiser. She was the only one still moving as I announced, and Lauren Love will be our new part-time student ministry. And Courtney Kaiser was like, ah, ah, ah. She starts like clapping enthusiastically, and when everybody unfroze, she was like, I got to tell you, this is exactly what I've been praying for, that this exact move would be made, and I had no idea that she had been praying for that. I was like, man, God, you're doing a new thing, and it's super cool, so it's good to know that God has been up to this behind the scenes. By the way, there is a student ministry campfire tonight, but you do have to pre-register. You can go there to find the pre-registration for that, but things are kind of getting back in a groove. Our first really post-COVID or COVID event where we'll be having a campfire here. So let me end with this point. I heard a leader named Joe Saxton, incredible lady who's just an incredible follower of Jesus, say this, and I'm stealing it. She said this: when it comes to all the stuff we're going through, we're not going to bounce back. We're going to build back. And man, that is so true of momentum. Like, we're not just going to bounce back from it, and after everything's over, everybody's just going to come, oh, I'm back now. Man, this has been great. I've been worshiping online, and man, I've been asking God, what do you want me to learn through these changes and these crises and all that? Like, no, it's not just going to happen. We're going to have to build back, right? And a lot of that is relational. Like, we're going to have to build into people. We're going to have to build relationally into people, and it's going to take a bunch of bold, godly faith from a whole bunch of people. It's going to take less, I just show up on Sunday people, to be really frank. It's going to take outrageous generosity from disciples of Jesus. It's going to take servant leadership from our Mo Group leaders. It's going to take a unified spirit from all of us as we worship and serve together here and out in the community. And what's happened during COVID is there's been this large, invisible layer of people that the elders and the Mo Group leaders, we just don't know if they're there. Like, if they're not interacting in some way in the chat room or showing up or giving or whatever, if there's no way that they're kind of like pinging our radar, then they're invisible, and we just don't even know if they're there. We don't know if they've decided to leave Momentum. Man, the staff transitions. Or if they've been discouraged and faded away from the faith. Man, just all that's going on in the world. Racism, pandemic. We don't know if they've just faded away or if they're there but just silent. And so it's going to take teamwork from all of us reaching out to people to say, hey, how are you doing? Like, hey, is there a way that my Mo Group can serve you? Do you have a need? It's going to take us all reaching out together to connect with people and, to be frank, going to Momentum people and re-inviting them to Momentum. To say, hey, we're back together again. We're building from this stronger base, and we're not going to bounce back. We're going to build back, and I want to invite you to come worship with me or to meet me in the chat room. But it is going to take teamwork from the entire church. Here's the bottom line. I feel called to ministry. I have ever since a year after I became a Christian, when I was 16 years old. Like, man, God, you are calling me to ministry. Until you ever tell me that I'm called away from it, that I know this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I promise you, as a leader, I'm going to make some mistakes. I'm not going to get it right the first time on some things. I'm going to go back and I'm going to try again, get it right the second time. I'm going to try again with whatever it was. But I think that we have the opportunity to accomplish some really cool stuff together. But the truth is, when we celebrate that, it's not going to be a me celebration. It's going to be a we celebration. Because here's the deal. I think that we can do some stuff that each of us individually could never do on our own. We'd have to do it as a team together. And I think there's incredible potential and a chance to be a part of something really, really special together, but the stakes are high. And it's going to take everyone taking a step forward to say, all right, how do I help build back from this? Because God is doing a brand new thing in this season. Let's pray together.